What's up, Military Millionaires? Today's episode is extremely exciting. It is with Jason Redman, author of Trident and Overcome, New York Times bestselling author. Also, wounded veteran, made an awesome recovery, teaches speaking, like public speaking, has just some awesome platforms. This guy is incredible. I got to meet him in person a few months ago, and his story just rocked me, and he is just incredible. So I finally got him on the show. Super excited to bring this to you. Navy SEAL veteran Jason Redman, and we're going to talk through how to overcome obstacles, which is extremely relevant given what's going on in the world right now. Definitely stay tuned. As always, show notes are found at FromMilitaryToMillionaire.com/podcast. Now relax and enjoy the show.
You're listening to the Military Millionaire Podcast, a show about real estate investing for the working class. Stay tuned as we explore ways to help you improve your finances, build wealth through real estate, and become a person that is worth knowing.
Hey, what's up, guys? I wanted to take a brief moment and talk to you about one of my favorite websites or apps for finances, and that is Personal Capital. Now, what Personal Capital does is you can go in and you can set it up. It takes a few minutes, but you can link every financial institution account that you own to it, including the thrift savings plan. You link it all to this. You can even link your properties, as far as like you can link your mortgage, and then you can put what you think the property is worth, and it does all sorts of stuff, tracks your spending, all this other stuff. But my favorite thing is that it is a net worth tracker. So if you put that your properties go up in value, or it's worth $500,000, every time you pay off your mortgage, that will show, and then it will just update, and now you know, hey, my net worth is increasing, or you see that your TSP increased, or you see that your credit card debt went up and you need to pay some down, or you see your credit card went down and you have more net worth. So it's a phenomenal way to track everything in one spot, and you can also see a lot of great statistics. Just a phenomenal app. I'll put the link down below for you guys. Hey, what's up, Military Millionaires? I'm your host, Dave Pere, and I'm here with Alexander Felice, and our guest today, Jason Redman, who is a retired Navy SEAL, wounded warrior, New York Times bestselling author of both The Trident and Overcome, veteran advocate, acclaimed leadership and resilience speaker, coach, consultant. And I had the pleasure of meeting him a few months ago. He came out to San Diego with a guy that I really look up to named Bedros, and they did a free for veterans thing, and I got to hang out and talk and do lunch, and it was incredible. And I'm just really glad that we were able to have this opportunity. Jason has an incredible story. So welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, thanks, guys. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't you give the audience a little background and tell a little bit of your story real quick before we dive into all the cool stuff you got going on now?
All right, for sure. I'll try and condense a lot into a very small package. I mean, the bottom line, I was a young kid. I was 17 years old, still in high school when I joined the military, aspirations to be a SEAL, and went straight down that pipeline. Found myself in SEAL training when I was 19. So was 20 when I became a SEAL, started operating in Central and South America, doing counter drug work. Got picked up, went off, became an instructor, got picked up for a commissioning program, got commissioned. Was at school when 9/11 happened, and then got commissioned in 2004. The world had changed, obviously, and really the military had changed. Those who had watched that transition, we quickly learned that a lot of the tactics in this new warfare we were fighting was different, and there were a lot of things that had to be adapted. So some of those hard lessons that I learned as a young leader, I stumbled and made some mistakes. And thankfully, I had some good leadership that believed in me despite those mistakes. And they gave me some opportunities to grow and build myself. And that kind of started this whole new path of leadership, this journey of leadership. Along that journey, I went to U.S. Army Ranger School, really came to understand who I was, strengths and weaknesses. And then from there, continued to climb up the ladder, learning more and more. Deployed to Iraq in 2007 during a very active time in the Iraq War, working in the western province of Iraq. Got shot up in a big gunfight in September of 2007, hit 8 times between my body and body armor, including 2 rounds to my left elbow and a round to my face. So needless to say, did a whole lot of damage. Took about 4 years and almost 40 surgeries to put me back together. During that time, while I was in the hospital, got quite a bit of notoriety for this bright orange sign I hung on my door that basically said, "Don't come into this room with sadness or pity. I'm going to make a full recovery by just being relentlessly optimistic and lifting others up." That sign enabled me to meet President Bush, and to this day, still has tremendous momentum. Multiple people have written about it in their books, including Secretary of Defense Robert Gates, First Lady Michelle Obama, and went on, finished my career, retired with 21 years. While I was still on active duty, I started my own nonprofit to help wounded warriors, ran that for almost 10 years. During that time, started speaking on leadership and resiliency to companies, teams, and organizations. Wrote my first book, The Trident, which was about that leadership journey. And now am focused full-time on speaking, moving into the coaching world. I'm starting to develop some consulting programs, and just a few months ago released my new book, Overcome, which is really the step-by-step process of how you build an overcome mindset, how you deal with extreme crisis and adversity. So it is a fantastic book for our times right now. I've been getting a lot of people reaching out to me who have read it and said, "Oh my God, I'm so glad I read your book before, we got hit with Kung Flu."
Is it just me, or does everybody else feel like emotionally weak loser now?
Man, but hey, we all feel the same way though, because I see other people who will throw out, I don't know what it is about human nature that we're such compare-based organisms. Like, we look at somebody else, like Dave, you brought up Bedros, and when I met Bedros Keuilian, we spoke at the same event. And I remember looking at the roster of speakers, and these guys were all like multi-millionaire, super big entrepreneurs. And I was just like, what the hell am I doing speaking on this stage with these guys? So it is funny, Alex, that you bring that up. I think all of us do it, man. We look at somebody else and we try and compare. And it's one of the big things I try and make sure I don't do, even though I do it from times. And I try and tell others, man, hey, man, you got to set your own path. We all walk a different path.
Yeah, I like that though. It's inspiring too. And I like not to go off too on a tangent, but I like what you said just then about, and not to compare my situation to yours in any way, but I do feel that as arrogant, I'm known for my arrogance. I know you don't know me, but that's what I'm known for, or at least my persona of arrogance. And so, but I also feel
you got to be super arrogant to rock that bright pink shirt as an Army guy. Like, you just got to embrace it. You're like, this is me in this super pink shirt. I love it.
Yeah, nobody else can do it but me. That's humble. That's not arrogant. That's humble. But look, what you said was really important. I think you said, I go in front of all these entrepreneurs and I'm speaking, and you say, what do I have to say to these people? And I think that there's a balance between, it seems like extremes, humility and arrogance, but there's a balance, because you have to be arrogant enough to go up there and speak about your truth, but humble enough to say, hey, look, these are impressive people that it's an intimidation factor, which is a manifest of humility. So I like that you do have both. You have to stay a little bit humble to think that there's other people that shouldn't be as impressed by you.
And I think, and I know that some of that came from the path that I walked, because I will tell you that I had a lot of arrogance when I was younger. I really thought I came back into the scene, and that's why I made a lot of mistakes as a young leader. I really thought I was like God's gift to leadership, and when I fell, and I fell hard, man. I had quite a few guys in the SEAL teams that said, kick that guy out, get rid of him. He's dangerous. All he thinks about is himself. And that's a very humbling journey. And that journey of really coming to understand who I was, my strengths, my weaknesses, that I wasn't as great as I thought I was, really, I think, has kept me grounded now for all these years. That oftentimes our perception of ourselves does not match the perception that other people see. And sometimes they're drastically different. And I think if you can stay grounded and understand that, you're never quite as great as you think you are. That's kind of what
How
I
dare you,
always
sir?
remind myself. Yeah, it's true.
How dare you, sir?
Oh man, that's it's true, but it's unfortunate. So that's incredible.
Yeah.
And I love that you speak openly about that, because a lot of people, would kind of bury the hatchet, so to speak, about failures. It's almost like like frowned upon for people to publicly say like, hey, I messed this up. And so I love that you're open and transparent about that. I think that speaks volumes. How I know you've been doing lives. You've been going live like every day during the pandemic and everything. But how are you holding up with everything going on right now? How do you think some of the resilient stuff is? I know you mentioned it already that it's been going off the shelves, but how do you think some of that can portray into like current what's going on right now?
Well, I think more than ever, we need it right now. I mean, I think some of the biggest things that I speak on is having structure, having some discipline, having those goals, finding positivity in the negativity. I mean, right now, God, we're inundated with negativity. I mean, every time you turn around, um, the news is already negative enough as it is. So if you watch the news prior to the pandemic, it was, this politician's terrible and this politician's terrible. On both sides of the aisle, and then throw in a nice helping of rapings, killings, murders, and everything else that's going on in the world. So we're inundated with negativity all the time. So well, now we've got the pandemic that's taken over all the news. So and we're all feeling it. It's not just one of these things in the news where you listen to and you're like, well, that doesn't really touch me. I mean, there's nobody out there that hasn't been impacted by this. So many people, our unemployment, 35 million, I believe, is what the claims were last week, one of the highest in U.S. history. Businesses are shutting down at astronomical rates. So all of us are feeling the impact, myself included. I mean, my primary revenue source was speaking on stages, and I was on track to have the most successful quarter in the history of my company, rolling into the second quarter of 2020. And in about, I'm not kidding you, in a 96-hour period, we watched every single event get canceled like dominoes falling, to where suddenly we went from the best quarter we've ever had. This will be unequivocally the worst quarter we've ever had in the history of our company. So, and I'm faced with all those decisions that any other small business owner is faced with. How do I, thankfully, we were smart. My wife and I have always tried to keep 3 months of operating expenses in our account if we can help it. And thankfully, because we had been strong, we had that. So we were able to manage that to take care of our staff. But, you're having to watch every expense. You're watching things. Everybody's trying to pivot. And, how do we figure this out? So the bottom line is I'm going back and using my own principles, even for myself, to be like, hey, dude, let's buck up. Let's get off the X, man. Where's the silver lining in this? I know there's some positivity out there. And that's what we're focusing on. And that's what we're trying to spread to other people, like you said, in the lives we're doing every night.
Yeah, I don't have the scale. I don't think that you do, but you said it first, right? Like, you can sit around and watch that news, but maybe you're more informed, maybe you're not, but you're certainly more miserable, and that doesn't help anybody. And it's not to say you should ignore these things, but like, I'm still going out and doing business. I've started to try to pivot. A lot of people are trying to pivot, and not to make, to your point, I think, I'm not big on structure personally. I mean, not to say I'm against it. I just can't do it. But I think right now it's time for everybody to find their own path through this. Because if you sit there and you look towards, God forbid, you look towards the news for help, I mean, they're not helping you right now. They're just selling fear.
Yep. And you nailed it. Are you listening to something that actually gives you useful information? And in the beginning, I almost never watched the news. I went through a period where I just totally cut it out. And I mean, if there was anything big going on in the world, I'd see it in social media or somebody would mention it to me. Right. And since the pandemic started, I started watching it. I started watching it a lot more. But now I feel like I'm getting into this bad habit. I'm breaking out of my normal habits where every morning I'm getting up, I'm drinking my coffee and I'm watching the news, and I end up getting sucked in, and it's providing me zero. There's no information that's really useful that I need. So finally this week I said, dude, I'm just going to go back to stopping to watching the news. It's just doing nothing for me. It's not moving the needle in my life.
It's funny because I had cut off news for a long time too. And when all this happened, they installed I work in an old skiff, there's no windows, secured room or whatever. So they installed a TV though, so that we could keep up to date on the news. And we've been working flip-flop shifts lately at work. And so when I'm teleworking right now, I noticed a drastic difference in my mood just from sitting around the TV at work. It was like when I'm at home, I'm not really worried about anything. I'm just doing what I got to do. Everything's good. Hey, this is a pass. And when I'm at work, it's like, it's hard to ignore the overwhelming, because they won't let me turn the TV off. But, it's not like, it's just, even if you're not paying attention, it's just there. And it is just mental shift in negativity. It's insane.
It reminds me of George Orwell, which I read 1984 every few years just to make sure I stay vigilant. The 2 minutes hate. Everybody wakes up in the morning and, just be angry at the TV for a few minutes. And it feels so dystopian. But Jason, to your point, I know you mentioned lives, but what else can people do right now to pivot? At least maybe not specifically because, you're talking to a lot of people, but mentally, right? Aside from turning off the news, I'm really big on curating your Facebook feeds. I mean, just unfollow the people who are not helping. And so do you have any other advice about, mentally pivoting?
So I would say this. I've been teaching something. It's something I touch on in the Overcome book, but it's something that people have just grabbed onto in this pandemic. It's become one of the biggest things that I've been asked to speak about. And it's this idea that human beings are built on structure and progress. And Alex, yourself admitted you're like, I'm not a structure guy, but I will say that obviously you get things done. So there is a level of structure somewhere in your life. It may not be this really strict, hey, from 5 to 6 a.m. I do this or do that. Everybody operates off their own flow. But the bottom line is there's at least enough structure that you get things done. And that's the second component of it, progress. Human beings, we like to accomplish things. It makes us feel good about ourselves. So this is where I've been teaching something in this pandemic. If you do nothing else every day, I teach the rule of 3 Ps of goal setting. Get up in the morning and write down these 3 Ps. 1, physical goal. So you're going to get out and you're going to take a walk, or you're going to get out and you're going to do a workout. You're going to do a chest workout, back workout. You're going to go for a run. You're going to do CrossFit. I don't care what it is. It doesn't matter. But 1 physical thing a day, 1 personal thing a day, 1 personal thing a day. So this is, and really this could be anything. It can be, I'm going to balance my checkbook today. I'm going to pay my bills today. You know what? I'm going to clean my bathroom today. I'm going to clear out this closet, or I'm going to work in the yard, or I'm going to play games with my kids. It doesn't matter what it is, but it's something personal that impacts your life. And then the third one is professional. What are you doing professionally that's going to move the needle? Right now, there's a lot of people that are out of work. So, they're like, oh, there's nothing I can do. It's beyond my control. Well, that's absolutely not true. What are you doing this may be the greatest opportunity ever for you to move out of a lane that maybe you didn't want to be in. I know a lot of waiters and waitresses who are out of work, and they never wanted to be a career waiter or waitress. So right now, what a better time to start looking at what other road you could go down and start building that every day, putting a little time in. It doesn't have to be a lot, but if you block off just a little bit of time to work on that, I guarantee you'll get to the end of the day and you will feel better about yourself. Because once again, it comes back to that people feel good about themselves when they've accomplished things. So that's been the biggest advice I've been given on mindset to people, how you build that overcome mindset. It's checking boxes off and feeling good because we're making some progress when you're in a period of society where progress really isn't happening per se. And if you listen to the news, the world has been shut down. So, this is what you're facing.
So I love that you gave this advice. I love it. I heard this similar advice years ago and it changed me. So I know what you're saying works, but I heard it a little bit differently. Somebody said you need 3 hobbies in life to be happy. 1 to keep you in shape, 1 to make you money, and 1 to keep you creative. I say it all the time. I repeat it. It's not exactly like you said. I think I like yours better, but it's that idea. Invest in your professional future, your financial future, invest in your physical self, and then your personal, for me, it's creativity, but for me, it's photography, but I just love that. And it's such well-rounded advice. 3 Ps. I like that. That's good advice.
Yeah, thank you. Yep, the rule of 3 Ps.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's just, and the 3 Ps is incredible, but the fact that you mentioned just like writing it down and checking it off as you go, I'm a huge advocate for journaling, as far as just writing down what you got to do for the day. I could have the exact same 3 or 4 tasks. And if I write them on paper with a little checkbox next to it, I'll get them done. And if I don't, I might get some of them done. And then at the end of the day, I'm going to go, oh man, I wasted so much time. Why? Well, because I didn't tell myself you're going to do this at this time. And it's just that little difference. Like today, I've got a million phone calls, but running is going on in an hour and a half. And I will feel way better when that's done. And if I don't do that, I'm going to, I don't know, haze myself tonight, I guess. But yeah.
Public flogging in the square.
Yeah. And to your point about structure or, and your comment about my own comment about being a lack of structure, it's like what you're saying about, people are reward system based. And so if you give yourself a little accomplishment, McRaven wrote that book, Make Your Bed, right? It's like a 2-hour on audiobook. And it's like, dude, wake up and make your bed. And it means nothing. It seems like it means nothing, but you wake up and you're like, I got something done. Now I got some momentum and I feel good. Now maybe I can get a little bit more done. And so you sit there, and I love writing because it's one of those things where you write something down, it clears your mind out, it gets things, it turns them from an idea to actual reality. Like there it is on paper. I'm going to do my 3 Ps. You wake up, you write them down, and then you got a to-do list. You have a goal set. And if you get them all done, you're like, dude, I mean, those are three can be big or small, but they add up. They add up big. And that's just such a good way to live. I love that.
Yeah, it's the most basic level. And that's what, it's so funny you brought up McRaven's speech, because it's one of the things that I use as an example of that, that structure and discipline. I mean, the structure, you're getting up, you're making your bed, the progress, you accomplish the goal, and you're like, well, I did something. Now let me keep this momentum going throughout my day. So, and I love his example of, even if it's a terrible day, you come home and your bedroom looks nice. It doesn't look like a train wreck drove through it.
Yeah, there's something about stress. Like when your house is a wreck and in the back of your head, you're like, I gotta go home and clean that house. It stresses you out. You get home, last thing you want to do now is clean the house. And then you wake up and that thing just festers. And it's like, it's so meaningless. And yet it's so impactful. Those small stresses, those small loose ends. I don't know. Go ahead, Jason, David.
I kind of look at
feel it.
I kind of look at the journaling piece as it's like the way to, get from ground zero to ground one. And then once you make that first step, you're good, right? Well, that kind of ties into something you say all the time is the first step when you come under fire or when you get big is the get off the X, right? And I'd love if you could just expound on that for just a minute, because I've heard you say it before and it's really impactful. And I think a lot of people fail to understand the importance of just starting. Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's so funny in our coaching group, the Overcome Army. That was one of the things we talked about the other night is the power of action, or the power of inaction. So this idea of get off the X, it came about because I obviously survived an enemy ambush, pretty vicious enemy ambush in Iraq, and one of the principles of how we survived is in the military and special operations. We had always been taught that if you are caught in any kind of ambush, whether it is an IED ambush that has additional gunfire, if you're caught in a sniper ambush, whatever it is, the point of the incident, the point of the attack is the X. And in order to survive, you have to get off the X as quickly as possible, whether you attack into it, whether you blow through it, whether you, navigate around it, whatever you do, you've got to get off the X as quickly as possible. So we utilized that principle for my team and I to survive that firefight, along with multiple others that I got in over my career. Well, fast forward to laying in that hospital bed. I remember being absolutely overwhelmed with what the doctors were telling me. You know, when I first got to the hospital, I was told, "Hey, you took 2 rounds in the left elbow that effectively destroyed your elbow. You know, you have no use of your left hand. You know, you've got massive nerve damage. You know, we're probably going to have to amputate your arm. You know, you got shot in the face. Your face is all mangled." I was wired shut. I was trached. I was being fed through a feeding tube. I'd lost so much blood that I'd had multiple transfusions, and I was so weak from the blood loss, I couldn't even get out of bed to go to the bathroom. Like literally, I had to have nurses help me go to the bathroom, which is pretty humbling. So all of this occurred, and I remember just being absolutely overwhelmed. Like I literally felt like I was back in the firefight, still being shot. And I was like, I remember kind of a little bit of this epiphany moment, like, dude, you're still on the X, and you can lay here and feel sorry for yourself, or you can get up and move. And that's what you need to do. You need to get off this X as quickly as possible. So that was kind of the first seed. And then as I started working with more wounded warriors in my nonprofit, I started working with companies and individuals. It just started to crystallize. I was like, holy smokes, man, everybody in life gets stuck on the X. Whether it's a massive, what I call massive life ambush, you know, it is a ambush of life. So it may not be like bombs and bullets that are, you know, like that are occurring on the battlefield, but they're the bombs and bullets of life. And the average person out there will go through about five major life ambushes in their lifetimes. And these can range. And when I talk about a major, it's something that will forever leave mental, emotional, or physical scars on you, or a combination of the 3. So they can be anything from the ending of a pretty deep relationship, whether it's, you know, boyfriend, girlfriend that have been together for years, or it is a marriage, a divorce. It can be a personal or business failure. It could be a lawsuit. It could be a bankruptcy. It could be personal injury, personal accident or injury to you or someone you love. It could be sexual trauma to you or someone you love. It could be the unexpected loss of a loved one, or one of the biggest ones I've seen is the loss of a child. These are major life ambushes. And when they occur, you're on the X. And how we deal with that, you know, everybody processes it differently. But what I came to realize is the faster you get off the X, the better you do. And that timeline's a little different based off what happens. Obviously, if you lose a child, I would never expect anyone to be able to run off that immediately. But if you have in your mind that anytime you get on the X, that you have to get off as quickly as possible, that the X is like quicksand. The longer you sit on it, the more it pulls you down, and the harder it is to get that momentum going. If you can build your life around this mindset, it really starts to play dividends. Because from the majors, they even go, I rank them in 3 different categories. You have major life ambushes, you have minor life ambushes, which are really what I call schedule disruptions. And people may sound callous from this statement, but this pandemic, I call this a minor life ambush. Now, there are some people out there that it's become a major because they've lost their job or they're losing their business. That's escalating it to the higher level. But for most of us, it's really a major schedule disruption. That's the reality. So it's inconvenient. It's a pain in the butt. But at the end of the day, most of us are going to walk away without major mental, emotional, or physical scars. So that's why I call it a schedule disruption. But no different, you are on the X. And so many people, when they have schedule disruptions like this, man, we know them. They are the individuals that they come into work and like the world has ended. And you're like, oh my God, what happened? And they're like, oh, my car broke down and now I'm having to take the bus to get to work. And you're like, really? You know, I mean, a year from now, you probably won't even remember that. But I know so many people that get on the X. And then the last one, which sometimes is the most dangerous, are micro ambushes. These are the ambushes of the mind. These are those things where, like when I went up on that stage with Bedros and I felt like, man, what am I doing here? You know, and it damages our self-confidence, and it damages, for a lot of people, it damages our ability to take action. Because we get too afraid and we convince ourselves, you know, you're not good enough, you're not fast enough, you're the wrong race, sex, creed, color, you don't have enough money, you're not smart enough, whatever it is. whatever lies we tell ourselves, you're on the X. And there's a lot of people that live their lives on the X. And if you could build this mindset of getting off the X as quickly as possible when these things happen, it will be amazing the more success and gains you see in your life. And there's a whole series of things I teach in my book, something called the REACT methodology, to a step-by-step process for you to be able to analyze and take steps to get off the X.
Love it.
I'm inspired.
Today's show is brought to you by Audible. Audible is offering our listeners a free audiobook with a 30-day trial membership. Just go to audibletrial.com/militarymillionaire. Now, why Audible? Audible content includes an unmatched selection of audiobooks, original audio shows, news, comedy, and more from the leading audiobook publishers, broadcasters, and entertainers. I listen to Audible every single day on my commute to and from work. Now, to download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/militarymillionaire.
So, but in the beginning of that talk, you said I got shot a bunch. My elbow was hit, face was hit, trach, but you sound good. You look good. Your elbow seems to work. I mean, I can't believe you're not. I'd be the biggest egomaniac in the world. I'd be telling people I'm invincible. I'd be like, nothing can stop me now.
Sometimes I do joke when things are happening, and I'll be like, so if the plane went down, all of you people would die, but I'd probably be okay. I'd probably walk away.
Dude, I'm pretty sure M. Night Shyamalan made that movie about you, Unbreakable. Pretty sure.
Yeah. No, I wish that was true, man. No, I definitely learned my own mortality, but and you keep grinding at it. I mean, the physical leadership, and this is another thing that I find. It's something else I wrote in the book. I am definitely human. As a matter of fact, I don't care who you are out there and what you've been through, whether you're at the highest levels of the game, like The Rock, or others, you're still human, and you still have human emotions. You still have the doubts, fears, insecurities that all of us have. And it's just people who are super successful have figured out how to get off that X and navigate through them faster, or at least manage them better than others. I used to think, and now I coach a lot of people who will ask me the same thing. They'll say, man, I want to get to a point in my life where I never doubt myself. When do I get to that point? I'm like, I got bad news. Never. It'll never happen. It's part of who we are and how we're made. But you do bigger things, don't you have new doubts because you're in a new comfort zone. Absolutely. Like, yeah, I mean, I'm moving in the coaching realm right now, and I'm like, man, I mean, I feel like I'm pretty qualified to coach, but is my program good enough? And am I giving good enough advice and all these things? I mean, it's just natural when we move into areas. But I will say on the physical side, one of the things that happens to so many of us, and it happened to me, I was totally guilty, is when they were putting me back together and finally, I started working out again, I wanted to be the exact same Jason Redman that I was before I was wounded. And I had these unrealistic expectations, and I would get super frustrated because I was so weak. Literally, I think I could barely bench the bar when I first started working out again. And I couldn't do push-ups. I used to be really strong in push-ups. I had a good, strong upper body, and I was weak as water in all these areas. Not only that, it was painful. So I got really frustrated, and I told myself, I'm just not going to do this. This is stupid. If I can't be who I was before, then this is just a waste of time. But those are additional lies we tell ourselves. And what you have to figure out as we get older, as we have injuries, as parts of our lives happen, you become a different version of you as we get older. So what I tell people is you got to figure out how to always be the best 100% version of yourself now. As a matter of fact, I describe it with my injuries as, imagine, if you will, if you had a yardstick and we cut out 3 inches from that yardstick. Well, that yardstick's now 33 inches long. It's no longer 36 inches. It will never be 36 inches again because those 3 inches have been destroyed because of injury or whatever happened. So it's so unrealistic, but everybody does it. They live their life like, well, I want to be the full yardstick again. Well, you're not, man. I hate to tell you, you never will be. But what you got to be is the best version of your new you. And it took me a while to figure that out. And that's what I try and encourage everybody out there. How do you become the best version of yourself?
And that hits home for me. Alex has heard me griping about this the last 2 weeks. So I had my PCL replaced in my left knee in October, and before I blew it out, I'd been running triathlons. I was a little bit lighter than I am now, and I was in pretty good shape. And I'm finally cleared to run. And so right now I'm like, I'm going to go run 3 miles. And every time I feel good, I try to step it up a notch. And I'm instantly reminded, like, I can't run that fast. I can't sprint. I can't do, like, not yet, not yet, not yet. And it's just been like a constant sucker punch as I try to push the envelope every week and get reminded that I can't. It's just not there yet. And so I'm not gonna say I'm glad to hear that, but I probably needed to hear that right now, because I know people have been hearing me like, oh yeah, getting back at it. Oh man, that was so. Oh, I feel that right now.
It's true. Everybody does. And as we get older, our goals change, our lives change. Where we're at, and I think that's where how do we find the balance to be the best version of ourselves? And I think that's the biggest thing, where so many of us, and I'm super guilty, I want to be that 100% version of myself that just unfortunately physically is not possible anymore.
You mean I'm not going to be 28 forever? That's bullshit.
It is bullshit. I'm so damn pissed off. But hey, no.
Somebody needs to tell my ego, because my ego don't know it.
Yeah, that's the truth. All right, so you have had a successful run with getting into the entrepreneur space with the nonprofit and speaking and helping other people get into speaking, and now you're the Overcome Army, which we're going to talk about in a second. But was there a catalyst to wanting to get into the entrepreneur space when you got out, or how did that? I'm kind of curious how you made the transition from military to like full-fledged multiple business owner, successful entrepreneur.
It was not a plan. I was not naturally a business guy. As a matter of fact, sometimes people ask me if you could go back and tell yourself advice on things to do, aside from don't be such a stubborn asshole. I would tell myself, you're making a lot of money in the military, a decent amount of money. And I pretty much blew all my money when I was younger, pretty much on drinking and partying. That was what I did. I mean, probably about the only smart thing I did was I bought my first house when I was 23. That was about the only sound financial investment I made. Aside from that, it was years before I got smarter with money and really started looking at the world from a business sense. And I'll tell you, I am not a natural business guy. I'm a little jealous of someone like Bedros Koulian is one of these guys. I'm so impressed, and I think a lot of it comes from experience, and a lot of it comes from he just has a natural business mind. Bedros will see how people do things in business, and he will immediately see not only ways he can make their business better, but ways where he can benefit from making their business better, whether it benefits his business from relationships or whether it benefits his business financially. And really, that's a gift. That's an amazing strength. For me, that's learned. That does not come about naturally. So fast forward, really what happened is it became just a byproduct of what I decided to do. When I was in the hospital, I couldn't wear regular clothes. I ended up having to get my uniform modified to go to a military ceremony because of all the hardware and stuff I had. And somebody said to me, man, that's really cool what you did with your dress blue uniform, so that so I could I had this external fixator in the trach so I could wear my dress blues for this ceremony. And they said, you're probably not the only one that needs that. And that kind of translated into the creation of Wounded Wear, the nonprofit I started when I was, after I was injured, and, t-shirts and all this. So that grew, and I learned a lot about business. I'm the king of the school of hard knocks. Probably other people out there, they're a lot smarter than me. They would have done everything probably at least light years faster than I did. But School of Hard Knocks, you learn a lot of lessons, and you learn ways to do things, and you learn how to hire and all that. So that kind of translated into an appreciation for the business world. So a lot of times the businesses were launched out of necessity or out of a need. When I was getting ready to get out of the military, I tried to get hired on with speakers bureaus. I was like, yeah, man, I want to become a speaker when I get out. This will be great. I couldn't get a single speakers bureau to list me. And so I was like, well, okay, fine. I'll just create my own. So I created my company, Soft Spoken, and was like, all right, I'll go out and I'll try and sell myself under my speaking company name. Always with the idea of someday creating a speaking company with it. And so it just kind of grew. We've done some things right, and some things we've done wrong, and some things we're always still figuring out. I mean, I think that's part of entrepreneurship. But I will tell you this. The one thing that I don't think I'll ever be able to go back and work for anyone else again, the greatest thing, aside from the highs and lows of riding the money that comes in and the money that goes out and all that, it's the freedom that comes from running your own business. And I would not trade that for anything. After spending 21 years in the military, and, you know, at the end of the day, and I came from probably the most liberal military unit in the entire United States military. I mean, the SEAL teams, you know, we're probably the loosest unit that's out there, and we still are very structured compared to the civilian world. But it is that ability that, you know, if I want to change my schedule at a second's notice and go to my kids' you know, soccer game, I can do that. I don't have to ask anybody, you know, and that's one of the greatest gifts that entrepreneurship gives. And I think sometimes all of us, myself included, sometimes we'll lose sight of that when, you know, when the world shuts down and 96% of your revenue dries up and you're like, oh my God, this sucks. I wish I had a steady paycheck. But the flip side of that coin is, hey man, you're the master of your fate. You are the captain of your soul. So drive forward, grind through the hard times, and you know, the money comes and goes, but at the end of the day, it's the freedom to be around the people and to pursue the mission and the purpose that you have in this life. That's what I love about
W-2 is golden handcuffs.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, they feel nice for a little while.
You don't have the flexibility you have in a business, the creativity you can have in your own business. And that's a gift. If you're someone who enjoys having that freedom and that flexibility, start your own business, man. It's hard. It's a grind. It'll have its ups and downs. It'll have sleepless nights where if you have staff, you're like, oh my God, like I can't tell you how many times over. So we started our nonprofit in 2009. So 11 years, over the past 11 years, how many times I've looked at our cash flow and said, oh my God, I only have enough money to keep this company afloat for a few more months, you know, and I got to take care of people. And, you know, you figure it out, you grind, and I mean, that's just how it is.
Starting a business is almost always less money and more work and worth it.
Yeah. and that's the hardest thing. It's pushing the I believe button and starting it. You know, continuing to keep it going is really tough, that middle phase also, until you really get the momentum. But for most people, they're too afraid to push that I believe button and start it. But once you get past that hurdle, man, now it's just, you know, applying the gas and the throttle to get the momentum going.
All right. So to transition real quick, we mentioned Overcome Army 2 or 3 times throughout this podcast. Could you give us just a brief overview? I know you mentioned you're getting in the coaching space, but you know, what is Overcome Army and who's it for?
So the Overcome Army is for anyone out there that wants to be the best version of themselves. I mean, it doesn't matter. You know, it's always fascinating to me. There's a lot of programs that are out there that teach, you know, I'll help you make more money. I'll help you be better. I don't know. I'll help you be the best Casanova out there. I mean, there's all kinds of different programs that people are sold. But at the end of the day, none of that matters if you don't know how to lead yourself and you don't know how to deal with adversity and overcome the hardships of life. And that's really what I try and teach. It is about that structure and discipline and motivation. It's also being around like-minded individuals. So we don't tolerate negativity in the group. You know, it says in the rules of the group, if you come in, if you're spreading negativity or if you're attacking other members of the group, it's one thing if it's a constructive conversation and you can do it tactfully and diplomatically if you disagree with something saying, but it's another thing if you're just bringing negativity to bring negativity. And the goal is, I call it emotional leadership, your ability to project positivity in the face of negativity. And we need more of that. It's one of my tenets that I teach in something I call the Pentagon of Peak Performance. So these are all the things that I teach within the Overcome Army. It is I also wanted to make it for the average everyday person. And I think there are some people out that are like, oh, I don't know, he's a Navy SEAL. He's probably going to be super hard and rough. And it's not really what I'm about. There are other programs out there that are designed for that. If you want to go get your ass kicked and simulate SEAL training, then, there's some great programs out there like that. Bedros is running a program actually called The Project. And I love the idea of the project, but it is definitely not for everyone. I mean, it is a very high end. It literally is basically Hell Week for about 72 hours with a spin on it that they teach you how to build your business and stuff like that. And there are some people that A, they don't need that, and B, they don't want that. So how do you help people become the best version of themselves, to be the best dad, the best husband, or the best wife or mom, or the best entrepreneur, or the best physical version of yourself? Those are the things that we're trying to teach. So you come into the program and I teach, I have an online course. So basically you have a combination of online classes. I release a new online class every 2 weeks. You progress at your own pace. So if you're super motivated, right now we have about 15 classes, I believe, in there. So you could be super motivated and crank them all out in a week, or, for most people, it looks like they're doing about one a week. And then every other week we have a live, kind of a live coaching discussion. So like this week, for instance, we talked about action. And that stemmed from every Monday morning in the group. I do a live 7 a.m. on Monday mornings Eastern time. It's called Monday Muster. And the people that are up, they get up and they're on there with me, and we talk about a topic, and we talk about positivity, and we talk about attacking that week and how great it is to have a Monday. Monday, I tell people it's the day you reset. It's the day you pull your compass out and make sure you're on course. And then usually we're taking that topic, and that becomes our discussion point for those two lives. And we just talk about, where can we better implement action and try and get some conversations going within the group. So that's the Overcome Army. It's the group coaching program. I'm also doing individual coaching, so working with people one-on-one, getting deeper into the weeds on who they are and trying to develop action steps for them. And someday we will escalate this to even one additional higher level. It's part of the plan for the group. I ran a program for Wounded Warriors for a while called the Overcome Academy. It was a leadership program for Wounded Warriors, and it really was a step-by-step process on how to build your life after you left the military. How do we define our new mission? How do we find our new purpose? How do we navigate in this uncertain world called the civilian world? But funny, I had a lot of Wounded Warriors that were like, dude, everybody could use this. So I took all that curriculum, and someday that will probably turn into a mastermind called the Overcome Academy again. So people within the Overcome Army, if they want to step up to that higher level, we really want to be able to design a roadmap for them to accomplish their hopes and dreams and really know who they are.
That's awesome. There's definitely use for that, for sure. So I don't know what you're pointing at, but all right. So Jason, thank you so much for joining us today. The one thing I always ask everybody at the end of the show is, where can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, Dave, thanks, man. And Alex, definitely great to be on with both you guys. You guys can find me the easiest place, jasonredman.com. That's my main website. And from there, it takes you everywhere else. It's got all my social media links. I have getoffx.com is my site that has my coaching, my online store. And I'm on all the socials. So Jason Redman WW is pretty much my handle for everything. So Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and I have a YouTube channel for videos and stuff.
Dude, my webcam cut.
Alex is frozen, and we are all hearing
Not cool,
about
bro.
it.
Yeah, no, but we can see you as the thinker. Oh, you're back.
I got backups. Hey, I Googled you. You're your website doesn't come up on front page. You got good news. You got good SEO here.
For my name, we actually just so we created a new website. It's funny. It's actually one of our to-dos is continuing to improve the SEO on our current website to drive it to the top. So
Yeah, well, hey, look, if Gary Sinise and Wikipedia are the first two entries, you're in good shape.
not too bad. Not too
You're in
bad.
good shape.
Love it. Jason, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, Dave, you and Alex both, man. You guys keep crushing it, and good luck out there. If I can help in any way, please let me know.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to another episode about my journey from military to millionaire. If you liked it, be sure to visit FromMilitaryToMillionaire.com/podcast to subscribe to future podcasts. While you're there, we'd love for you to rate the show, give us a review on iTunes. Now get out there and take action.